Good evening. Thanks. I call the meeting to order. All members are present. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Benjamin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. All 9-0. Okay. Next up is public comments. At every regular meeting of the board, up to 60 minutes have been allotted for public comments. The board will not respond to public comments. However, a member may ask the chair obtain clarification. Residents, parents, students, and employees of the district will receive priority on the list of speakers. If a speaker is not present, but his or her name is called, the opportunity to speak will be considered waived. Only persons signed up may speak. Speakers may not give their time to another person or have someone speak on their behalf. Speakers may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will not hear in open session complaints about the performance of school personnel, personnel issues, and confidential student issues. Should a speaker wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, members of UCPS cabinet staff are available to address your concerns or provide information. Cabinet staff members are seated at the table to my left. The first speaker is Reagan Shaw.
Culture wars are designed to breed distrust in public schools in order to bolster the case for the GOP using public funds for private schools through voucher schemes. Funding private schools with the public purse is a well-coordinated effort to erase the separation of church and state so that extremists may indoctrinate kids into political and religious ideologies and to further enrich already well-off families. It's a scam. We're set to lose over $5 million at UCPS by 2026 due to the GOP voucher scheme. And that's just the beginning. How do you get voters to defund public schools and ignore the money schools are due from the Leandro ruling? You try to get people to fear public schools. One way to achieve this is by digging up old tropes about the LGBTQ community being a sexual threat, including pathetic, easily debunked fear-mongering about trans peoples in bathrooms. This is what the Moms for Liberty targeting of LGBTQ kids is all about, and why they read naughty passages from books for book banning. Naughty passages have been around since the Bible and Shakespeare, and were certainly in many books in my high school in 1990s. If you want to have a naughty passage showdown this year, ladies, I'll match you book by book, and we can tour the classics and the raunchiest, most sexually shocking parts of the Bible. Buckle up and polish your clutching pearls. But for heaven's sake, stop harassing our amazing teachers and librarians with your Florida talking points. We're all lucky the remaining teachers haven't walked out by now, which I wouldn't blame them for, given the lack of salary and respect, the huge class sizes, and the divisive, hurtful, extremist policies that land on their desks. They deserve so much better. We must also make sure that our LGBTQ kids' well-being is not sacrificed as a political pawn. I was hoping to spend time raising awareness about how you've been removing books with two-daddy families. Otherizing gay parents is the absurd stuff of Westboro Baptist weirdos. However, I've been too busy for social media because this past month, through the DOE's Office of Civil Rights, other local parents and I, together with UCPS students and advocacy organizations, filed a complaint of systemic discrimination of LGBTQ students at UCPS. More Title IX legal action may follow. You botched the rollout of SB 49. Unlike other districts, you did not complete the policy process before school starts, including fulfilling the federal requirement of a Title IX evaluation. There is currently no official policy established at UCPS for SB 49, and in its place is a chaos of misinformation being implemented, the likes of which we are just starting to document. It's dangerous, and according to advocacy attorneys, it's illegal. We are also witnessing principals ripping down pride flags when you have yet to make a decision about this issue. The reason you still refuse to answer questions about inclusivity symbols and their role in the curriculum under Standard 2 is that your intent is discriminatory. It's easy to prove. Walk around any school whose principal has asked for pride flags to come down. You'll see loads of non-curriculum things that have not been asked to come down. The blatant discrimination of the classroom display policy enforcement is literally on display. Stop spending your energy attacking our already vulnerable LGBTQ kids.
Next up is Harold Schumacher.
Good evening, Board. Good to see you guys again. Last month, I spoke to you about the 1986 vaccine injury law and how the law is being violated by the Department of HHS by refusing to do the legally required safety testing and biannual reporting to Congress. You may be wondering what testing is done. There has to be some kind of testing. Yes, there is testing, but it isn't even remotely sufficient. Childhood vaccines are the only medication where no placebo-controlled trials are done. Let that sink in. Every other medication has a placebo-controlled trial, but not childhood vaccines. So what kind of testing is done? The control they use is another vaccine. So for example, Prevnar 13, when it was coming out, was tested against Prevnar 7. Prevnar 7 had 7.2% serious adverse events, and Prevnar 13 had 8.2% serious adverse events in the trial. With 4 million babies a year, that would translate into 320,000 serious adverse events from just one vaccine. Prevnar 13 was approved because it was deemed equally harmful as Prevnar 7. It's not exactly how they phrase it. They say it's equally safe, but the reality is it's equally harmful. Let me read you the CDC definition of what qualifies as a serious adverse event. It's specified by the Code of Federal Regulations is when one of the following is reported: death, life-threatening illness, hospitalization, or prolongation of hospitalization, permanent disability, congenital anomaly, or birth defect. Dr. Paul Thomas was part of a pediatric practice in Oregon. They had a significant number of parents that avoided vaccines. The practice wasn't anti-vaccine. They developed their own recommendation, which was to delay until age 3 and spread the shots out. Dr. Thomas took 13 years of data over 5,000 children and compared the two groups, those that followed the CDC schedule and those that either delayed or avoided. Those that followed the schedule had the same rates of autism and ADHD as the national averages, 1 in 35 for autism. But in the group that delayed or avoided, they found 0 autism and 0 ADHD. This should have been groundbreaking. The CDC should have changed their schedule, but they didn't. Instead, Dr. Thomas faced disciplinary action from the Oregon Medical Board. What's clear to me is the answer is not going to come from the federal government or the CDC. It has to come from our local governments pushing back and taking action to call them into accountability and force them to either publicly defend this absurdity or change it. I believe we must break from the CDC schedule and restore sanity and a child safety first approach. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Abigail Prado.
Hello. First, I would like to begin by addressing a public comment made last month about the book Old MacDonald Had a Baby. A parent from Unionville Elementary School took issue with this book and submitted it for challenge. In accordance with school policy, Unionville Elementary created a parent review committee who reviewed the book and voted to have it removed from the school. The Union County Board of Education had nothing to do with the removal of this book from Unionville Elementary. Neither did the Moms for Liberty Union County chapter. Our chapter fully supports parents challenging any book in their school that they deem inappropriate, but as of today, our chapter has not challenged a single book. Second, I would like to address the proposed bathroom policy that would prevent biological males from entering our daughter's public school restrooms and locker rooms. Last year in the Gettysburg School District in Pennsylvania, an adult male coach entered a students-only locker room and sexually harassed the underage girls that were in there showering. The coach, David Yates, had recently begun identifying as a transgender woman. He walked into the girls' locker room where the girls' soccer team was changing and showering and stripped off his clothing, revealing his bra and panties. The girls reported that the man's erect penis was not fully covered by the skimpy panties he was wearing, and that they were, quote, disgusted and uncomfortable, end quote, having an adult man in their locker room. While exposing himself to the students, Yates tried to ask the girls intrusive questions about what types of panties they preferred wearing and about the details of their menstrual cycles. The school district quietly reprimanded Yates, but did not fire him over the incident because they were afraid of public and legal backlash due to his newly adopted transgender status. Yates' behavior was legally, ethically, and morally wrong. No adult should ever enter a student-only restroom or locker room while students are present. And furthermore, no biological male should ever enter a female-only space. Unfortunately, the school's lack of action emboldened Mr. Yates to commit another offense. In April 2023, just a few months after the first incident, Yates followed a 16-year-old student into a girls' restroom. They were the only two people in there. The student reported that she felt, quote, very, very uncomfortable, end quote, that an adult man was trying to have a conversation with her in an empty restroom. Unfortunately, this is just one of many incidents where an adult biological male has used his transgender identity to gain access to a female-only space in order to sexually harass or sexually assault underage girls on public school property. The current policies that we have in place do not protect our daughters from these predatory men. By allowing men to enter these spaces, we are forcing our daughters to compromise the privacy and the personal boundaries that they deserve. Even worse, we are putting our daughters in a position to be sexually assaulted and raped. I am imploring you, the Union County School Board, to create a new policy which will forbid biological males from entering our daughters' female-only bathrooms and locker rooms. Our daughters deserve to have their boundaries and dignity respected, and they deserve to be protected. Thank you.
Next up is Eden Shaw.
Hi, I'm Eden Shaw. I'm 15. I'm from Cuthbertson High School, and I'm kind of like, I'm winging it. I don't have any facts here. This is just, what I get affected by in the middle school here. So feel free to like poke holes. I didn't, research any of this. So I'm just giving you like the teenage perspective of kind of like what happens here and how it kind of affects me. And just going to a few of these meetings and like seeing everything up here, and then it not really affecting how I, or like any of the people that I'm with, in school. It's just, I feel that there's a lack of kind of the student perspective here. And I feel like we're just kind of going in circles, and the meetings here are kind of an attempt to move the needle in one political direction or the other, and don't really, take into account what the students actually want. When I talk to the students that I'm around, they talk about, the technology, the kind of the one thing branching the entire school together, and, the new ways of all this. And I think so many of the decisions made here are kind of low on the priority list, from the perspective. And I think especially with the new nickname policy, and again, I didn't research this. I don't know how much you guys, have a say in this, but the new policy that, kind of has to make nicknames go through a legal process, and, have to approve it. You have to have your parents' approval to have a nickname. I think that's affecting a lot of students, and not just in the, not just in a, like, trans identity way, but I think definitely just in an annoying way. I think a lot of my friends, think that it's kind of stupid, and they, it's starting to gain kind of a public rap. So I just want to put it out there, no matter where you are, left, right, on the political spectrum, I think it's important to kind of know what's actually going on in the school, and not just up here. And I feel like there's nothing positive really being taken up from here that I feel in the ground level in my school. So I feel bad for the person who has to sit there and type in, can Catherine be called Katie, all day, and like change nicknames up and all that. So I'm might have tunnel vision. I'm just again, you guys are up here, I'm down here, but I just don't feel a lot good, repercussions being seen from up here. That's just my perspective. Again, poke holes in it if you want, but that's just how I feel.
Next up is Jen Sanders.
A little different tonight because I couldn't get my thoughts together today. So, okay. Good evening. I would like to start by saying again that the Moms for Liberty group are continuing to spread the national shock and awe campaign to distract us from what's really happening in our public school systems. The bathroom policy is not something we should even be discussing, considering it's been struck down by the 4th District as being unconstitutional. Our trans kids are not abusing anyone in the bathroom. She was saying that it's men, but we're talking about the kids and students here. If anything, it's the other way around. Moving on, let's talk about some important things, like the complete disaster of the rollout of SB 49. I'm appalled that the district did not take into consideration how harmful this is going to be for the many students in our district. Let me tell you how I started the first day of school. At 10 a.m., I got a screenshot from a student's classroom about how the teachers were handling the names for the students. I had a complete meltdown. I cried and cried all day until I could put my eyes on my son. See, I'm a lucky one because he's out. He has a supporting family, but thousands of kids don't have that support system, and kids' lives are in danger. Be prepared for the backlash that will come, because I guarantee you children do not feel safe here and will continue to unalive themselves. And if they feel trapped or outed, then that day will come. Your thoughts and prayers will not mean anything. I would like to remind the parents and families and students that are watching that the Trevor Project is a fantastic resource for you. And if you have thoughts of suicide, please contact 1-866-488-7386. While I have a moment, I would also like to discuss the voucher program of HB 823. This is currently going through legislation and aligns with the national narrative to defund our public schools. I'd like to give you some numbers that might help put things into perspective. Our county alone will lose $5 million in one fiscal year starting in 25-26 if it passes. What is $5 million? Well, that's the cost of the full expansion renovations, $4.7 million. What's $5 million? That's the whole budget for changes for the county appropriations mandated fees, which is $4.9 million. That's the whole thing. Think about those numbers. And how about we stop trying to ban bathrooms, ban books, listening to the national agenda to defund public education? How about we start putting our resources into helping support the underfunded students in our schools and the majority of Black and Brown and immigrant students? Let's figure out ways to help them succeed, encourage them, and learn how to, especially groups that are funded by the Heritage Foundation and Moms for Liberty are trying to undermine our public education. Learn how to continue this fight. Look for public schools strong, because we're organized and we're not going anywhere.
Next up, Brittany Bolden.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Bolden, and I am a Union County resident. I would like to start my speech, like so many do here, and say that I too moved here for the schools. But I will not be spending my entire time telling you how you should fundamentally change them. Instead, I will be offering gratitude. With an elementary school in Maryland mandating KN95 masks for some of their students, I'm once again reminded of how thankful I am to be living in Union County with what I believe is the best school board in the state for sure, but possibly the country. I want to thank you that during the first installment of the utopian nightmare called COVID, you immediately figured out how to get our kids back in school safely with the least restrictive environment possible, which, by the way, is standard protocol when limiting people's liberty in healthcare situations. Well, that is until COVID. Thank you for consistently making decisions based on what was right for the students instead of blowing with the ever-changing political winds. Thank you for finding a way to have in-person graduations when everyone was criticizing you and driving a fake funeral procession past your house in an effort to intimidate you into placating their fears. Because of your courage, those students have one less loss in the long list of losses from their senior year. Thank you for getting in-person learning back as soon as possible. Because of this, our students suffered way less academically, emotionally, and socially than many other children across the nation, especially California. Thank you for standing up to the state and the irrational contact tracing and quarantining. I believe that because of your courage in standing up to Cooper and Mandy, they were pressured to finally drop these protocols for the state. Thank you for taking many arrows that we know was not easy. You did that for our children at great cost to yourselves. I could go on and on. Know this, I am not the only one who is thankful for how UCPS handled COVID. I can tell you that there are many parents who are thankful for UCPS and who were happy to support you in all that you did for our children during that time. I'm here to tell you that if the COVID tyranny tries to strike again, we are ready and we will be honored to support you once again. We will have your back. Never again. Thank you.
That's the end of public comments. I need a motion to approve the open session meeting minutes from August 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 9-0. Next up, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? 9, thank you. Next up is the bus driver retention bonus. And the after-school bonus.
Good evening. So yes, you've got in your packets the proposal from the operations department for the after school and the transportation retention bonus. And if you have any questions related to those, I'll be glad to answer them with those at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. I need a motion. Oh, Matt does. I'm sorry, Matt.
So what happens if a driver is in an accident and is out because of the accident? They come as absence.
That would be an excuse. Yeah, that would be classified as excused absence. That's why we add the number of those accidents.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So they'll understand though the difference between excuse and unexcused?
Yes, we will
Okay.
clearly specify that with
Okay.
the drivers.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, we need a motion to approve the bus driver retention bonus.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 9-0. Next up is the after-school program bonus. Any questions? No? Okay, I need a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 9-0. Thank you. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
So I want to give a first week of school update. We have now completed 7 days of the school year, and so far, so good. According to our staff and especially to our principals, this has been one of the smoothest starts to our school year in a long, long time. I've visited schools throughout every cluster. Our teachers, our students are doing a remarkable job. I want to say a big shout out to our school leaders, to our educators, our support staff. They have really kind of hit a home run to get back into the school year. On the operations side, very big kudos to our operations staff, transportation, facilities team, our child nutrition team. Again, great job, Team UCPS, and let's make this the best school year ever. Last Friday, we announced another partnership between UCPS, Wingate University, and South Piedmont Community College. The Union County Guarantee was developed to make sure every student who graduates from high school has a clearly defined, affordable, and easily accessible plan that leads to a meaningful career. We hope this program will do a lot to further remove barriers for our kids and provide more students with access to a college education or career. If parents want more information, they can visit the Wingate University website. Look for the tab that says Apply and Afford. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the passing of longtime UCPS educator, Dr. Jerry Thomas. He started as a teacher here, worked as principal at Wingate Elementary, held various administrative roles in central services. He then held the honorable position as superintendent from 2000 to 2005. His family has our deepest condolences. With that, board members, this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to
Yep.
kick off the next one?
I'll be glad to. So, shifting gears, today the state board was presented with the accountability results from the prior school year. That has been made public, and tonight we are proud to present to you the 2023 UCPS Accountability Update. As we go through this presentation, I will introduce Dr. Jonathan Tyson, who is Assistant Superintendent of School Performance, as well as Dr. Matt Schleider, who was our Director of Research and Accountability. I'm going to save my overall remarks towards the end, but I will say this. Very, very proud of Team UCPS. What you're about to see highlight the amazing work of our entire team from the top all the way down. You're going to see how we compare to the state, how we compare to our largest 12 districts, which for us is what we benchmark ourselves off the largest 12. And really the way in which we as a district are further rebounding back to where we were in the 18-19 school year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Tyson.
Well, good evening, and Dr. Houlihan stole some of my thunder, but of course this morning we did hear at the State Board of Education meeting the results for the state of North Carolina. As always, it's a time where we're very eager. We're ready to hear how we did as compared to the state, and tonight we're going to hear some real celebrations. But as always, we're going to hear we still have work to do. If we're going to be a district that pursues continual improvement, we always have work to do. But you're going to hear tonight some very good news as it relates to our accountability. So before I turn it over to Dr. Matt Schleider, who's going to go through some slides with you and do the presentation, and then we'll entertain questions at the end, I just want to say our school leaders, our teachers, our building level administrators, and all of our support staff should really be celebrated. Last year, they did amazing work, and the results that was done at the school level, just kudos to them. They go to work every day. They put forth just a yeoman's effort, and we're very proud of the work that they did. And tonight, you're going to see the results. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Schleider. I'm going to let him go through the presentation, and then we'll entertain questions. But thank you for letting us be here tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, good evening. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present these data to you. As Dr. Houlihan said and Dr. Tyson said, I think you will be very impressed. Again, these data were all presented this morning at the State Board of Education meeting. There is a link in the presentation there in case anybody is interested in data from across the state level data, as well as UCPS data. I will just add in on this slide, all of the data that are presented are preliminary. The state gives us an opportunity to respond to the preliminary data. They will be officially finalized at the October School Board of Education meeting at the state level. But I don't see, as the district's accountability director, I don't see anything problematic in the data that I've seen. So our data, I anticipate, along with the state data and other districts, will be finalized in October. Just an overview of the presentation. I'll briefly go over ESSA, which is the federal legislation that guides accountability. I'll talk a little bit about the North Carolina accountability model, as well as the academic results from the 22-23 school year. We'll talk about school performance grades and low-performing schools. We'll also add in some non-accountability performance indicators, some career and college readiness data, as well as some additional academic data pieces, and wrap up with key accomplishments and next steps across this school year. So ESSA is the federal law, stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. It's the federal legislation that drives accountability across the country. Each state is able to develop their own plan or model in order to meet those federal testing and accountability requirements, and North Carolina has done that. The state of North Carolina has applied for waivers to ESSA a couple of years ago, and you can see on the slide from the 1920 school year, EOY testing was waived due to COVID. We did not do end-of-year testing that year. And accountability was also waived that school year as well. And when I say accountability, I mean things like school performance grades, designations of schools as low performing, and whatnot. The following year, 2021, we had a partial waiver. So we did do EOY testing that year, but we did not do the accountability piece that year. The 21-22 and 22-23 school years were as normal. There were no waivers there. So we are, in that sense, back to kind of pre-COVID with regard to accountability at the state and federal level. The next slide goes over the North Carolina accountability model in general. On the left-hand side, you see the indicators or the assessments that go into the elementary and middle school compilation of school performance grades. You have your end of grade tests in the areas of reading, math, and science. You have your end of course tests at the middle school level. That's NC Math 1, when 8th graders or middle school students take Math 1 at the middle school level. You have English learner progress. That's the rate at which students who are learning the English language progress with regard to learning the English language. And you have EVOS growth, which we'll get into shortly later on in the presentation. The right-hand side has the high school model, which differs considerably. You have your EOC tests at the high school level in Math 1, Math 3, Biology, and English 2. You also have EL progress at the high school level, as well as a combined indicator that groups together performance on the ACT and the ACT Work Keys assessment, which I'll talk about shortly. Math core rigor, the cohort graduation rate, and again, EVOS growth. And I'll talk about a couple of those indicators in a little bit more detail later on as I get into the data piece. So with regard to scoring and our EOGs and our EOCs, students can either be considered not proficient, which is what we used to refer to at levels 1 and levels 2 on end of grade tests and end of course tests. This reflects students with a limited or partial command of the subject matter on the assessments. Once we move into the category of students who are proficient, there's two ways of calculating that proficiency. The first one is grade level proficient, or GLP. You'll hear me refer to that a lot throughout the rest of the presentation. GLP is the percentage of students who score level 3 or above on EOGs and EOCs. That is students who have a sufficient command of the subject matter. It's used for calculating all of the state accountability measures, such as school performance grades. And it's also included in all of our accountability reporting and the NC school report cards, which come out later in the fall. The other area of proficiency that is calculated is career and college readiness, or CCR. That is the percentage of students who score at level 4 or higher, and it suggests that the student is on track to be career or college ready upon graduation. That proficiency rating is typically used for federal accountability measures, but it is included in all our accountability reporting and on the NC school report cards, which again come out later on in the fall. So on to the data piece. This is our overall district proficiency with regard to each year. You can see there is the bottom row there is the 22-23 school year data. The middle column is UCPS. You can see on the bottom there, 69.3% of our students were at GLP, which again is percentage of students scoring level 3 and above. That's our overall proficiency for the district. That score is above where we were last school year at 67.7%. You also can see there the CCR number. That's the percentage of kids scoring level 4 and higher, which was 51.6, which also was higher than the same number from the previous school year. We've seen a steady increase in proficiency each year in the direction of where we were pre-pandemic, which you can see there from that top row, the 18-19 school year. And that overall score of 69.3 with regard to overall proficiency was number 1 in the state with regard to the 12 largest school districts. And it was number 2 in the state with regard to school districts overall. We were only behind Chapel Hill Carborough School, which had 71.1% overall proficiency. We were 1.8 percentage points behind the number 1 school district.
That's awesome.
You can also see the same pattern there for the CCR number. Again, 51.6 there for CCR. Same kind of thing. That was number one with regard to the 12 largest school districts and was number two behind Chapel Hill Carrboro with regard to school districts across the state.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Diving a little bit deeper, these are data for our elementary schools with regard to proficiency. You have columns there for reading in the grade levels 3, 4, and 5. You've got math for 3, 4, and 5. And on the far right, you have science for 5th grade. The bottom row there is the 22-23 proficiency data. And you can see all of the 22-23 proficiency ratings were above the same scores for the previous year in 21-22. I'll also draw attention there to math in grade 3 and math in grade 4, which is generally equivalent to where we were pre-pandemic in the 18-19 school year.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is. Middle school data, similar chart. You can see there 6th and 7th grade data was generally similar or slightly up from the 21-22 school year. We did see some decreases in 8th grade data with regard to reading, math, and science from the 21-22 school year.
And how does our middle school data stack up to the largest 12 in the state?
I believe we were number one with regard to the 12 largest districts. We were number one in in 8th grade reading and 8th grade science and 8th grade math. High school EOC proficiency data. All of these data points with regard to Math 1, Math 3, English 2, and Biology are up from the 21-22 school year. And I'll draw your attention to NC Math 3 and English 2, which were both consistent with or above proficiency data points from the 18-19 school year pre-COVID.
That's awesome. Yes.
There are some additional high school performance indicators that are in the model that I talked about earlier on that first slide. The first one here in that second column is the ACT. You can see there's a considerable drop in proficiency from the 2020-21 to 21-22 school year. We went from 69.1% down to 57.6%. The reason for that is the state changed their cut score for what they consider to be proficient. And they upped that cut score from 17 to 19. And we talked about this at this presentation last school year. I redid the math for our ACT data. You can see the note down there at the bottom. Had the state not changed their benchmark for proficiency from 17 to 19, the 21-22 ACT proficiency data point would have been 70.2, and the 22-23 data point would have been 69.9. So if you look at those data without the change in the proficiency cut score, we generally stayed consistent with about 69 to 70% proficiency on the ACT.
That's awesome. No, right?
The ACT Work Keys assessment is in the center. Work Keys is an assessment that measures work skills that are needed for job success. It's usually given to our CTE concentrators at the 12th grade level. There are 3 assessment pieces in there: applied math, workplace documents, and graphic literacy. Each of those areas measures skills that would typically apply in a workplace environment. So as opposed to the ACT as kind of a college-bound assessment, ACT Work Keys is kind of a career-bound assessment. And you can see there, our proficiency rate on the ACT Work Keys was up from last school year and generally and rapidly approaching our pre-COVID rate from the 18-19 school year. Math course rigor on the far right, that is the percentage of students who score, take and pass NC Math 3 at the high school level. And generally across the past however many years, we've scored greater than 95% on math course rigor at the high school level. High school cohort graduation rate. The CGR is the percentage of students who start ninth grade in a given year and finish high school within 4 years. Right? And for this particular cohort, these kids started ninth grade in the 1920 school year, which is right when COVID started hitting, and a lot of high schoolers kind of scattered to different schools. Part of our responsibility with the CGR is to track kids down as to what schools they went to, homeschool, private schools, online schools, and just in general where they are. So it became a lot more cumbersome for our high schools to actually pull these data together. But you can see UCPS is generally consistent with previous years. Our high school CGR was 92.3, identical to the previous year, and generally consistent with years prior. And the state is considerably below us at about 86 to 87%.
I'll just add, before we clap again, that that if you remember, as Dr. Slider said, we were very concerned about the class of 2023 because of when they started high school. And I just have to say to our high school leaders, our counselors, our teachers, our support staff, who for the last 4 years have literally identified every single student to make sure that they have a successful plan to graduate on time. We were scouring the region, other states, home schools, private school to find out where kids were. And the fact that we were able to sustain this level of a high graduation rate is pretty phenomenal. So kudos. Thank you.
Can you tell me how the graduation rate, the 92.3, how that stacks up with the 12 largest districts?
We were number one. Yes.
How about all districts in the state? Do you have any idea of that ranking, irregardless of size?
I think I looked at the CGR with regard to all the districts. I may have, and I can look specifically for that number because I've got some of the printouts from the state data. Moving into school performance grades. School performance grades are calculated using a formula that takes 80% proficiency, what we've just talked about, and 20% growth, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. School performance grades are given to each school, an A, B, C, D, or F. So the achievement part of that, the 80%, we've talked about some of the proficiency data already. The growth part, the 20%, that comes from EVOS, and it's an indication of the rate with which students have learned over the past year for the school as a whole. So the standard is roughly equivalent to a year's worth of academic growth for a year's worth of instruction. Based on the calculations that are provided to us by EVOS, schools are given a designation of either exceeded growth, met growth, or did not meet expected growth. Similar chart to like I presented before, the bottom row is our 22-23 school year. You can see 42 out of 50 of our schools, or 84% of our schools, either met or exceeded expected growth. That is up from 60% the prior year, and it is rapidly approaching the rate of 86% of our schools meeting or exceeding growth pre-pandemic. You can see on the right-hand column there, we only had 8 out of our 50 traditional schools that did not meet expected growth. And I will add in there, I did not break out the met or exceeded column, but I will add out of those 42 schools that met or expected growth, we had 23 schools that exceeded growth. That number is up from 9 the prior year. So we went from 9 schools exceeding growth to 23 in 1 year span. School performance grades, similar chart. We had 42 out of our 50 schools receive a school performance grade of either an A, a B, or a C. That is 84% of the schools, which is generally back to very close to our pre-pandemic levels. We only had 8 schools that received a school performance grade of a D or an F, generally consistent or rapidly approaching where we were pre-pandemic. If you'll remember from the presentation last year, reducing the number of schools identified as low performing was an area at the very end of my presentation last year as a next step for intervention at the district level. And we've lowered that number from 13 low performing schools during the 21-22 school year to 7 during the 22-23 school year. I'll also add, in order for a school to be considered low performing, the criteria are that school has to receive a school performance grade of a D or an F. However, if a school exceeds growth, that school cannot be considered low performing. Criteria for low performing schools. UCPS decreased the number of low performing schools from 13 down to 7. That's a decrease of 46.2%. I looked at the data from the 12 largest districts across the state. Union County Schools ranked number 1 with regard to decreasing the number of low-performing schools. We decreased ours 46.2%. The next nearest district was 41.7%. Another number 1 for us. Moving a little bit out of the accountability world to some non-accountability performance indicators. These are areas that the district shines that we just wanted to pull into the presentation just so you can see the full scope of how well the district is doing. The first one here, these are career and technical education or CTE credentials that are earned. Put a definition down at the bottom there about what CTE credentials are, certifications that are issued by professional associations. You can see on the far right-hand side, the 22-23 school number is 12,981, which is 1,846 credentials higher than the previous year, and it is the highest number we've had in UCPS history. I keep telling myself the clapping's not for me. Not for me. I'm just saying the data.
I'm gonna invite you back to next board meeting, next month's board meeting.
Continuing this chart shows AP courses, AP exams taken. The top row is the number of AP exams that are taken. 22-23 school year, 5,779 AP exams taken, which is up 767 from the previous year, and it is the highest in our UCPS history. Yes. Down below is the pass rate for AP exams for the 22-23 school year, 69.0%, which is up half a percentage point from the previous year. And I will add in the fact that it is rare to see such a dramatic increase in the number of AP exams taken and not see a dramatic decrease in the pass rate. Typically, as you add more and more AP exams and more kids take them, typically you would see a decrease in the pass rate, and we did not. We actually saw an increase.
Yes. Why do you think that was?
I heard it, but I couldn't.
Why do you think that was?
I think the teachers, I know there was a requirement for Dr. Houlihan for schools to offer at least 10 AP courses, and I think the teachers stepped up. I think the teachers had high expectations and demands for students, and I think the students rose to that occasion and met them. I think there's good, high-quality teaching in those courses. I don't think the schools just added them and taught them halfway. I think they did a phenomenal job of teaching them, and it's kind of a similar pattern to some of the other high school data that you see in here.
Thank you.
Can you interpolate the data of number of exams taken to how many students are taking AP classes? I would be interested if that jump is according to the number of tests. In other words, did we have 4,000 students, some taking 2, some taking 1, and now we have, X more students taking AP classes? Is there any way you can interpolate that data?
I don't have them, but I could. I can ask Ms. Garner, our College and Readiness Director. I'm sure she has all of the data with regard to, if I'm understanding you correctly, right, the number of students
that are taking
and the number of
AP classes. I would assume if we're doing more exams, we've got more students taking AP classes versus the same number of students taking more AP.
That may be correct, and we also year over year have been adding more AP courses into the available schedule. So every year we're expanding the portfolio of options across all schools.
So more students have the opportunity to take AP classes than ever before.
That is correct.
Okay.
We can ask Ms. Garner to provide that information and send it out to you separately.
I'd be curious to see that, which I think more students having access and more students taking them is a great thing. Yeah.
But that's still pretty cool if a student's already taken an AP and then they take more AP. I take those numbers too.
I've got some more numbers for you to take. Here's the opposite end of the spectrum. Here's our K2 students just starting to begin the reading process. This is K2 proficiency data with regard to reading. The blue bars are the kindergarten students, the green is first grade, and the purple is second grade. The bars represent proficiency from beginning of the year, BOY, to end of the year, EOY. The bars are our data. The lines are the state data. You can see every indicator in there. We are far surpassing the state with regard to proficiency K2.
And I asked Dr. Slider to put this in for a few reasons. Number one, we typically don't share this kind of data because it has nothing to do with accountability. However, reminder that 2 years ago, UCPS was one of the first districts to jump on board with the state mandate of what's called Science of Reading training. And for the last 2 years, our elementary teachers have embraced that training, have implemented that work, and we are definitely seeing the outcomes of that implementation. The fidelity, the use of the curriculum, it's a phenomenal job. And I would say probably in the 7 years I've been with UCPS, this data is probably sets the foundation for the greatest level of foundational literacy skills of our youngest students that we've ever had. So these kids, our students going into that are now in first, second, and third grade, from a literacy standpoint, are in perhaps the best proficiency position we've ever seen. So huge congratulations and kudos to our elementary teams for sure.
So this was last year, which was the first year of letters implementation. Was it first year?
Technically, this year is the first year of letters because it's a 2-year training. Last year was year 2. They started the work around January, but really we should see this going even higher this year, I would predict, because this is the first full year of full implementation.
Gotcha.
But I think our K2 teachers in particular really embrace that work, and obviously the results speak for itself.
Yes.
That's more than double the reading proficiency in kindergarten over the school year. That's amazing.
So these data show this is the impact of our intensive tutoring program for our second graders in the area of reading. What you see on the left-hand side, the blue bars, this is reading proficiency data at our Title I schools that have a second grade intensive tutoring program. There's 3 of them. On the right, in the green, you can see the data from the UCPS Title I schools that do not currently have a second grade intensive tutoring program. There are 6 of them. You're seeing beginning of the year proficiency and end of the year proficiency. You see a gain on the left of 15 percentage points in the tutoring schools and a gain of 9 percentage points with regard to proficiency in the schools that do not. That 9% percentage point increase is extremely impressive, but the 15 is a whole lot more due to the impact of our intensive tutoring program. Similar data with regard to our fourth and seventh grade math tutoring programs. What you're seeing on the left, this is fourth grade math EOG proficiency from 21-22 to 22-23 school year. At the UCPS schools with a fourth grade intensive tutoring program, an increase in proficiency of 11.2 percentage points. And on the right-hand side in the green, you see a similar chart for the seventh grade math tutoring program, an increase in proficiency of 8.5 percentage points.
And if you'll remember, Board, the schools he's speaking of on these 2 slides are directly associated with what we call our focus schools. These are our schools that are identified as low performing, that we have implemented this strategy 5 days a week for children in identified grade levels, fully developed on our own. We did not buy a tutoring program. We developed this in-house, and I tell folks all the time, the tutoring is one ingredient in the recipe. The collaboration between the classroom teacher and the tutors is what makes this work. And so I don't want anyone to think that this is a result of tutoring. It's a result of teaching and tutoring. It's the double dose of math or core content. And when you see our number of low performing schools going from 13 to 7, this is a direct result of that work. And so we are doubling down on this strategy. This is work that's happening across, I would say now our schools have really embraced this as a school improvement strategy, not just in our low performing schools, but in many other schools, and incredibly proud of these results.
Now, Superintendent, this is in-person tutoring, correct?
This is in person during the school day, not before or after school.
Like in person, like they're looking at each other?
Not virtual. That is correct.
Is there a reason on the fourth and seventh grade slide that you did not include the data from schools that did not have the intensive tutoring like you did for the second grade reading?
The only reason I didn't do that was just to kind of condense the data onto the one slide to show. I do have data from those other schools.
And I was going to remind you, so we are currently in year 2 of a evaluation being done by University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I've spoken to this before, of a General Assembly grant for the purposes of studying districts that are getting results from pandemic-related strategies that are working. And so, to your point, they're looking at control and treatment, Mr. Sides.
Right.
At the end of this school year, they will be publishing our report, and that data will speak to exactly what you're saying.
Well, I understand they're researching for COVID, but I don't see any reason why these kinds of results couldn't be replicated on a non-COVID type basis. I think this is the conclusion I'm drawing from this is the tutoring works, and not necessarily just for recovery from COVID learning loss, but to enhance learning overall.
In general. And if you remember, I won't be long-winded, but this is kind of this data validates what we thought, because we implemented this same strategy in the 2017-18 school year. When we had 6 low-performing schools, in 2 years, we moved 4 of 6 out of low-performing. And we saw similar gains pre-pandemic, which is your point. Now we're seeing similar gains post-pandemic. It works, but you have to do it the right way with fidelity.
But in one respect, the 2022-2023 goes to Mr. Science points, because that's not necessarily in that period of time. That's outside that realm. So we do have some glance at what that's doing, not just as a strategy for that period of time, but just on a regular basis.
So we've termed some areas that we've kind of rebounded. So, and we've termed that the rebound is we've scored at least within 1.5 percentage points of proficiency from the 18-19 school year. And I've got 8 listed up there. Math with regard to math EOG with regard to grades 3 and 4. We've got high school EOCs with regard to math 3 and English 2. And I have the 4 below that with a couple of asterisks next to it. Just to kind of put those aside, they are areas that we've kind of seen rebound, but they are also areas that we really did not see a dramatic drop due to COVID and then a rebound. But I did want to include those all together. High school math, thank you. High school math, math course rigor, cohort graduation rate, as well as CTE credentials earned, and the AP exams taken, and the pass rate, which was also, like I said, the highest in UCPS history. Yes. So overall, our key accomplishments, UCPS with regard to overall proficiency on state assessments, which was 69.3 that I showed earlier, was the highest among the state's 12 largest school districts, and we ranked number 2 across the entire state. Again, Chapel Hill Carrboro was number 1, only 1.8 percentage points above us. UCPS ranked number 1 among the state's 12 largest districts with regard to 3 through 8 math EOGs, 3 through 8 reading EOGs, 5th and 8th grade science EOGs, all EOGs combined, all EOCs combined, overall proficiency, the 4-year cohort graduation rate, as well as the combined ACT work keys indicator. The only kind of big main area where we were not number one with regard to the 12 largest districts was the ACT proficiency, where we were at 56.8. We were behind Wake County Public Schools by 1 percentage point. Only area we were number 2. Key accomplishments to continue: 84% of our schools earned a school performance grade of A, B, or C. That's up from 74% last school year, 21-22. 84% of the schools either met or exceeded growth. That's up from 60% the 21-22 school year. We have proficiency returning to pre-pandemic levels in 8 academic and college/career readiness areas. The total number of CTE credentials earned, the AP exams taken, and the AP exam pass rate were the highest in UCPS history. And we have proficiency data showing the considerable positive impact from our intensive tutoring programs in 2nd, 4th, and 7th grades. Next steps going further. Yes.
Let's talk about what the accomplishments. It's amazing. It's awesome. Thank you so much for everybody that had something in it, the staff, Dr. Houlihan, and teachers, and everybody in the buildings. It's amazing. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, by all means. I'd love to read them all over again, but my voice is giving out. Next steps, we want to continue to focus on academic performance in order to further decrease the number of schools that are not meeting growth. We want to further decrease the number of schools that are identified by the state as low performing, and we want to increase grade level proficiency and growth across our middle schools. We want to continue the district's turnaround for schools identified as focus schools for the 23-24 school year to hopefully be able to present similar wonderful data to you this time next school year.
So I'll just give a few closing remarks. Number one, I took a call today from a colleague who had seen our data and reminded him that the continuous improvement journey to get to where you are for us, taking a lot of pride in being a high performing large district, getting to that level of high performance is incredibly difficult. Sustaining that level of performance is even more difficult. And what you're seeing year over year, especially post-pandemic, are historical records for us in terms of academic achievements. That does not happen without phenomenal leadership in our schools, phenomenal teachers, phenomenal families and kids that are putting the time and effort and support in every single day. This was a total team effort. I'm not satisfied with where we are in terms of the number of low-performing schools that we still have. That is still going to be a critical mission. We still have work to do. However, when you compare the level of performance UCPS has had from last year to the state and to the largest 12, we have really hit a home run. So to the board, I want to say thank you all for your support constantly, for asking the questions on what you can do to help our schools, for supporting the initiatives we have in place. We take a lot of pride in getting the return on investment that we have. And as I've said before, no other district does more with less than UCPS. And we take a lot of pride in that. And a big, big thank you to my cabinet staff and to our team who work very hard. Very, very proud. We look forward to celebrating this presentation with our principals tomorrow. So great job, Team UCPS, and thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the North Carolina School Boards Association. There's a vacancy in the board of directors for the NCSBA, and Gary Sides has interest in it, and I believe that he would do a great job, and we need representation in the NCSBA. So Gary it's on the.
So I'm going to go ahead and make
Go ahead.
I'm going to
Please.
make a motion that Gary Side's name be submitted to the NCSBA as a nomination for a vacancy on the NCSBA Board of Directors in the Southwest region.
All in favor?
Aye.
9-0. Great. Next up is the NCSBA Delegate Assembly and Annual Conference. It is on Monday, November 13th, beginning at 4 p.m. There's no virtual option anymore, so we have to go in person. So Donna, do we need 4 people to go? Okay. Is anyone willing to do it, Gary?
I guess I'll be showing up.
Okay. It's on November 13th, Monday. I can go as well on that day.
I think it starts early in the morning, so.
Right, you can go all day, but the voting for the annual meeting is at 4 p.m.
So you might want to think about it. You want to make the whole.
You can
thing.
let me know, just send an email if you want to go. Okay, thank you. Do we have to, is that an action? Okay, so right now we have Gary and me and anybody else? Jimmy? Sarah?
I can't
Sarah?
make it. I've played hooky from, well, we don't want to say.
Okay, so we have 3, Gary, Kathy, and Sarah. So we can have a motion for, or what?
We can have more than 4 people going.
Yes,
We can only have 4 delegates
Yes.
voting.
yes, that's what I said,
So-
yes.
You could sign up, but
But, okay, so Matt, okay, so we have 4 delegates. So we,
It's worthwhile.
what?
Worthwhile.
Okay, I need a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. All, I know. Okay. Next up is the calendar, Gary Sides.
it's hard to believe we're just starting one year and we're already talking about the next and the one after that. But in the past, parents have asked for plenty of time if there are any changes in order to meet or adjust their schedules with plenty of notice. So I would like to offer a motion to direct staff to develop a 2024 to 25 school year, which will be along the lines of the starting and end date of the current school year, and to develop a 25-26 calendar year with a starting date early in August and the first semester ending at the Christmas break. And the school year to end, hopefully right around prior to Memorial Day. I would like to ask staff to create surveys to survey our parents and population for these proposed calendars and to move that forward. I'll offer that motion.
Can we send it to Spit first? Because that's where it goes for the calendar.
Sure.
So we can, so everything.
Just
you-
direct staff to work on that data to present to Spit, and then come back to us.
Because they'll look up.
Can we
Yes.
make sure that we clarified that the survey is just a survey? It's not
It's just a
voting
survey.
for the
It's not voting.
community.
Yes.
It's just a survey to get people's gauge on what they want kind of thing, but it's not an actual voting.
So just, we have it, so the 24-25 calendar will be similar to this year's, correct?
With the
Unless-
later August start date
Right.
and the June
So the
ending date.
25-26 calendar will start early in August, and when the first semester ends before Christmas break,
Right.
and when school ends by the end of May.
For staff to determine what the actual dates would be
Okay,
for a starting date and with an end date
okay,
at the Christmas break. And then accordingly for the end of the school year.
so you're sending this to the Spit Committee to do this,
Work on the actual dates
okay?
and then present to Spit.
Yep.
Then to come back to us.
Right.
So do we actually need a motion for that then?
Yes.
To s-
We
I have a
need motion.
question.
Yes, we do. And
A motion?
no, we have to do a motion. We can't,
Second.
we have to ask we has to do it with as the board, not a single member can say, do this. We have to vote. So it's a motion.
And I second.
There's an unreadiness. I have a question.
Yes.
So what is being proposed, Mr. Sides? Let me ask this question. This would still be an illegal situation, correct? And that's just a yes or no.
As the law stands today, if it is not changed prior to the 2025 school year, we would be deviating from what now currently is the calendar law. What it will be like in 2025,
I
can't say.
understand. I'm asking as
Yes,
of right. Thank you.
yes.
It's no. I mean, yes. Thank you. All right.
So, but when we did this back in December, January, some parents were upset because we didn't give them enough time. So now we're giving 2 years to,
create an illegal document.
yes.
Thank you. Okay. That's all. Okay.
Oh, well, it depends. And I'm going to take that back. It may or may not be illegal in 25, 26.
As of right now, it would be illegal. Correct. Okay. All right.
It is in the best interest of the students, and I'm going to say it over and over and over and over again. It is in the best interest of our students.
Madam Chair, and I do not.
I know you believe,
Yeah,
I know,
right.
but
But I would like to say this, if I may. There were some things that the calendar has been the same since I was in school, for the majority, I believe. It's been so long ago, I can't even remember. But I know it was not changed. And at the end of the day, I know that there are some things that would help improve or help assist our students. But in life, I think there are some things that will help some, and some, even if you change it and you make it in black and white, there are still going to be some challenges. That's just life, you know. But I do not want us to exemplify breaking the law, especially when we have laws in place that we vote on in policy and what have you, and we expect our students and staff to follow them. And so when we do that, I believe it shows a double standard in a sense. Again, I feel as though it may be a good option. Like I said, we'll never know. But at the end of the day, I believe we need to uphold what is right. And again, it may change by that time.
right, I understand what you're saying.
And
Yeah.
so, but
Okay.
again,
But
I
certainly
hear exactly what you all are saying.
Currently, there's 16 districts that are doing this calendar right now, 16 of them. And they didn't get sued, and they didn't get anybody go after them about it. They just did it. And so I'm hoping that someday that the law will change.
let me see if you can look at it this way. I understand what you're saying. But if we take this step, perhaps other districts will follow and we will get the law changed. But you have to show some leadership in saying, look, this is we're going to do what's in the best interest of our students. And hopefully other districts will follow the example of these 16 that did it this year. And I hope this will start the momentum for a change in the law. So when 2025 comes along, we're not out of compliance. And I might add that public charter schools, which get public state money, are exempt from this law. They can start school and end it whenever they want to. And they receive state funding as well. All we're asking to do is to level the playing field, let our students that are taking end of semester to get it done before the holiday, rather than coming back and having to address the holiday learning loss, which I can only speak for my family. It was significant. We didn't crack a Chromebook during Christmas break. So we're trying to start the momentum to get this corrected.
But we're not voting on the calendar right now. We're just asking to what it would look like. So we would come back to us at some time.
And let us not forget that last year when we took this vote for the first time, it was 9-0. All of us agreed on the early start date. It was only when we got some folks' attention, I guess, that it became an issue. The biggest problem, most people supported it. They just didn't like that it was starting right away. So now we're doing two things. We're letting them know what we're looking into, so they have opportunity to plan. But also, hopefully, as Mr. Side said, we're getting to force our state legislators to get rid of this dumb law.
Okay, wait. Right. So right now, we have a motion and a second to direct staff. We already read it all. So let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 8-1. Okay, thank you. Next up is policies for review.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. There are 2 policies for first review and 2 administrative guidelines for review. I'm glad to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is board comments. Okay, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, ladies first.
I just want to say after, hearing all the, just our performance and everything, I am very proud and thankful and very proud to sit on the board here in Union County. It's one of the main, my husband's from here, but one of the main reasons why we really pushed to put my kid into Union County Public Schools. I'm just, like I said, just very happy and been proud and thankful for all the teachers and staff and to sit with my fellow members. So thank you very much. It's great.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
board members, Dr. Houlihan, as we were getting that great presentation, my mind began to wonder about all the times that space back there was filled with lights, cameras, and actions on various issues that have come before us, and news folks from everywhere was crowding that spot with cameras. And I was just thinking how cool it would have been tonight to have a room full of cameras listening to that report and those numbers for Union County Public Schools. I know they'll hear me because they watch and they scream. So yeah, I'm talking to you all. Should have been here tonight. Should have been here to hear the reports, because some of these numbers are beneficiary of the policies that we put in place during that period of time where folks are being locked down. And so I'm just proud to be part of Union County Board of Education. Thank you, Dr. Houlihan and your team, for just an outstanding several years of educating the children of this great county. Kudos and a heartfelt appreciation.
Okay. Anybody else?
Madam Chair, if I would,
Yes.
I would like to echo what Sandra and Reverend Benton has said. Tonight has really been a night to show the great things that take place here in Union County. And I'm even more excited to hear Dr. Houlihan. He said that he's not satisfied. And I think that is, out of all that has been shared tonight, that gives us a sense of hope that the cabinet and the staff will continue to work hard to make sure that every last one of our schools meet growth. And so to all of those schools who did not succeed the way they wanted to in the previous year, do not give up. Encourage your staff, because this is an opportunity for you all to go to bigger and better heights. And I believe that this staff and this team is going to support you 100%. And I'm going to speak from District 1. We are going to work to make sure that parent involvement is a very strong key in supporting not just the students, but the staff, because that gives great potential for the success of our students. So again, thank you, Dr. Houlihan. Thank you, cabinet, teachers, every last one of you, from bus drivers taking them to school, cafeteria workers. You all are celebrated on tonight. So thank you, guys.
Down here?
Gary?
Okay.
Gary's side?
I want to echo the sentiments. Thank you to everyone. I would also like to address Now, we've been dealing with growth here in Union County for as long as I've lived here. And currently, the town of Waxhaw is considering several developments. One particular large development referred to, or given the polo grounds, was proposed to some 1,300 acres of homes, apartments, what have you. And as one of their elected officials said, you know, the schools are our problem, not city of Waxhaw. So I feel compelled to give, and this is my own opinion. I do not speak for my other board members. I do not speak for the board as a whole, and I do not speak for the administration. I'm just speaking for me. But I want to give my personal take on what such a gigantic development would cause to the school system, to how to react to such of a sudden influx of residents. Now, first of all, I want to be very clear. I will not support any type of student realignment to accommodate this kind of, in my personal opinion, foolish undertaking. So I'm not going to displace current UCPS families to make room for this kind of growth. Now, this many homes and with undoubtedly that many students is going to cause the need for an entirely new additional cluster. High school, middle school, at least one elementary, and maybe more.
2 clusters.
Yeah. And folks, we're talking in the range of probably 225 to maybe by that time, $250 million. Okay? So that's everybody in Union County is going to be sharing the pain on that. As far as a timing for those schools, we currently have a long-range plan. And in my personal opinion, we should continue with rebuilding of our older high schools before, you know, putting in line. I'm not going to shove them out of line for a new cluster. So we could be looking potentially at 2028 before it will even be an opportunity to put a cluster or new schools to accommodate this on the ballot. Okay? That's if the voters approve it, you're talking about design, land acquisition, and the actual construction. I dare to say new schools would not open before 2030 at the earliest. Okay? And that's if they're approved. Okay, so how would we address this? Well, if you look at school capacity in the Waxhaw area, there's no room in the inn right now, in elementary particularly, or high school. The only solution I envision until we either can or the voters agree to new schools would be to transport these students to existing clusters with capacity. Elementary students to the Monroe cluster, and potentially middle and high school students as far away as the Forest Hills cluster. Now, that's an absolute transportation nightmare. So how would you address that? Well, in my mind, you'd have to have collection hubs. In other words, you wouldn't have neighborhood bus stops. You'd have to have a centralized area or areas where parents would be responsible for getting their students to and from these transportation hubs, and then UCPS would transport them to the appropriate school. We would not have the manpower, facilities, or time to be running every other street in the neighborhood, these new neighborhoods, to transport students to these clusters. So I'm sorry, Monroe and Forest Hills, but if this comes to fruition, in my mind, in the short to medium term, that's the only solution. And I think I don't know what the timeline is for the consideration of this development. I don't know if it's going to be coming before their planning board in the next month or so, which would then, it goes to a planning board and then it goes to the council for final approval. And I don't know what the timeline is for that, but I felt compelled to at least give my own personal opinion how we would address this large of a development in an area of our county that is already at or near full capacity. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments? If not, announcements for committee meetings. I have one policy committee meeting at September 19th at 8 a.m. via Zoom.
Facilities and curriculum, September 27th, 9 a.m. for facilities, 10 a.m. for curriculum via Zoom.
The Strategic Planning, Information Technology, and Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 27th at 8 a.m., and that would be virtual.
That was spit, right?
That is spit.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
What was in Reverend Benchin's
That would be
soda?
spit.
And
That
what
would be
was
spit. Okay, what,
Finance.
Finance.
Finance is to be determined depending on when we get a state budget.
okay. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. We're out. Opposed? Nobody? We're good.